Awesome. All right. Well, where we're picking up, uh, according to Terry, but also keep in mind, if I am wrong, please correct me. I'm the problem. It's me. Which title of a lot of inventory I've written, that's for sure. Where we're picking up is on page 83. And it is the one, two, three, third full paragraph. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So page 83, third full paragraph. And so what we would have spoken about over the past couple weeks is these different type of amends that we would make. And I always kind of joke when we're looking at these different types of amends that, in those early days, the co-founders, they were trying to scrape together, like rubbing pennies together, scrape together money so that they could afford to write and publish this book. So they weren't including stuff that didn't apply. So when we talk about the different, types of amends, like owing money, financial amends, if you're like, oh no, I owe money, you're not alone. Criminal offenses, not you law-abiding, wonderful lunatics. That's just somebody like me. But criminal offenses. And then we talk about relationship problems, like what do I do if I've created or caused or engaged in, I should say, infidelity? And how do I repair relationships if I've not engaged in infidelity? And where we're talking about right here is how do I make amends where it's not as simple as a direct amends, where I can't find them, where they've passed on. How do I make those types of amends? So it goes on to say there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. So maybe the person's passed on, maybe we've looked for them, maybe we can't find them, maybe they're not open to receiving the amends, but I feel it on my heart. And even though it said it's water over the dam before, I don't feel that way. So what do I do? It says we don't worry about them. If we can honestly say to ourselves, we would write them if we could. And I don't know about you, I still worry about them. Like that's the sort of person I am. Maybe you guys are more chill with that sort of direction. But anxious Annie over here, I'm a be ruminating on it. But it goes on to say some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And when we talk about that letter writing, I believe that's where that idea comes from. And so when we talk about people that we might owe an amends to, that we're not sure how to make that amends. Like, for example, it is somebody who has passed on, and I've made those types of amends. We often do, sort of in the culture of 12-step, what is known as a graveside amends, where we write out the amends, just like I like to write it out, and I like my sponsees to write it out just for prep work before we make the amends. So like we would any other amends. And if they're buried in a cemetery, we visit their grave. If there was a place that was maybe special to them or special to our relationship, if they don't have a gravesite, we go there and we read out that letter to them. And that's another thing that we can do. But if you're somebody like me and you take that course of action and you still feel it on your heart, there's some other things we can do. And these are just kind of from my own experience. And one is if you think about what was special about that person, and this is also really helpful for those of us who are going through and experiencing grief. We often don't talk a lot about grief, or we want to avoid grief, but like grief is real and it's part of the human experience. And if I owe amends to somebody who has passed on, or I'm feeling the weight of grief, one of the actions that I can take is I can think and reflect upon what was special about that person, what was important about who they were, and be intentional about bringing that into the world. And in that way, their legacy lives on. And so if there was somebody that it's passed on that loved dogs, and I didn't get a chance to make amends, I could take some time and go volunteer at an animal shelter. If there was somebody who loved reading, I could create one of those little local libraries or volunteer at a library. We can take an action. And I share that because there are times where I go and I make the amends and the weight still carries. But often it's action I need to take We're in the chapter into action. I need to take action to get free from the guilt and the shame. And that's often something that's happened. Another thing that we can do is what's known as a surrogate amends. Now, it's not in the book, but it's something that I've helped sponsees do. And how do I make amends to somebody who's passed on? Or maybe I've caused a harm to a group of people where it's like I can't find every person of that group that I've caused harm to. Well, I can find somebody, usually helpful to find somebody in 12 step. Like, let's say I owe an amends to my grandmother. And let's say that I tried the graveside amends and I did some of that, but I still feel that weight. I can take that amends and I can find somebody in the rooms who's a little who radiates that grandmother energy, and because they're going to know what we're doing, and I can read out that amends to them. And I've helped people with that, where they've owed amends, where they've engaged in things like racism or in sex work, and connecting with somebody who can receive that amends in a direct way to help create that healing, to help create that amends. Alrighty. So those are some things, throwing them out there. And if you're like, I don't want to do it, great, don't. It's not in the book. Completely ignore me. That's cool. Uh, that's what I'm fine with that. Uh, and so it goes on to say, and there may be valid reason for postponement in some cases. And I'll let you know, in my experience, the valid reason for postponement is usually a restraining order, or they just called the cops on us and we got to let that simmer down. But if you're here today, probably not. Like, I want to grab a hold of a valid reason for postponement. And like, I joke about this. I've had ones where I've really joked where I'm like, it's Arbor Day. I can't make an amends to them. They're so busy with Arbor Day. And actually, for the Canadians, we're coming up to Canadian Thanksgiving. Now, we'll have a bunch of you down in Georgia and are like, I can't make an amends. It's Canadian Thanksgiving. Y'all don't celebrate that, but I'll look for all these ways I couldn't possibly, and so in that is the idea of like, there may be valid reason for postponement in some cases, but not really that often, at least in my experience. And it says, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. More often than not, especially in 2025, we don't need to avoid it. And like, I can reach out. Like, let's say our friends down in Georgia were like, man, I'm really hung up on Canadian Thanksgiving, or it's Arbor Day. I think that's in the spring, and we're just you know what we can do? We can reach out and say, I want to acknowledge it's Arbor Day, and you might be busy with your family. So if now is not a good time, that's okay. But I would like to see if you'd be open to receiving an amends, and we can book it at a time that might work for you. Man, it's wild how communication is something that, like, I need the spirit of the universe to come into my life to even conceive of. That's how this little brain works. So it says, we should be, and these are directions on how we show up to amends: sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble. So we're using sense, you know, thoughtfulness, tact, another description of to be thoughtful, to consider the other person, considerate of them, humble. And that humility is that I'm not better than you, that I'm not worse than you, that we are equals, and I am dependent upon God. And it says, without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. That's how we can show up to talk, well, to amends, but also that's where, at least I feel like, we're called in all areas of our life, that true humility, no better, no worse, that we are equal. And I need to be dependent upon God. And I think that's it for that paragraph for me, Terry. Pew pew, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. Uh, yeah, this is a big one. I mean, some people cannot seem it would be that last amend that we talked about. People we can't actually contact or find. Most of the time, people pass away. I like the story you talked about with surrogates. I did that with my dad last year. Uh, I guess in the beginning, I was kind of like just rushing through the letter part. Um, it says honestly, ask ourselves, will we write them if we could? I guess in the first time I went around with the amends, it was more like it was a checklist. Like, get it done, get it done. That was my mindset. Um, but I had an experience where I gave painkillers to one of my brother's friends who became my friend, and, who lived right around the corner from me, and he was using pain meds from someone else, but I gave him some of mine, and he passed away 2 days later. And I wrote a letter, you know, to this was during my first trip with the meds. Yeah, again, I didn't have any parental supervision. I was just kind of doing this to get it done. No wonder I didn't have an effect that was produced by it because it was like, let's rush through this. Um, so I didn't feel anything after I wrote the letter. Um, but then 2 years later, I was delivering pizzas and I delivered to the place where I last physically saw my friend. And it was a funeral home. And I walk in there and uh, it's like 2 floors. And I'm like waiting for the person to come down. And he was like, well, let me grab a pen. And he went upstairs and something was kind of moving me towards that room where I last physically saw him because I went to his funeral. And I remember being pushed. I don't know, a weird feeling. And I had the opportunity to make amends there. And I remember asking him, "How can I make this right?" And he said, "Just this is exactly what came into intuition was just stay happy and stay sober." I don't know. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I don't know what the fuck happened at that moment. Uh, Something revelatory happened. I was rocketed somewhere. It was something I honestly tried my best to make right in that moment. That didn't happen to me during the first time. So yeah, I recommend similar to what Paige was saying, go to somewhere that has significance or somewhere a special place. Maybe had with that individual. In that case, it was by fluke. I guess it wasn't by fluke. God just kind of put it that way. Um, yeah. So then we're on the 9 step promises. Okay. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, painstaking just means with great care. Yeah, again, you heard me. I didn't really greatly care about doing this. I just kind of spit through it. Uh, but as time went on, when I started to see I guess, the value in making amends, uh, I'm honestly making amends and humbly making amends and doing my utmost to clear up the damage in the past and no longer be a knucklehead anymore. I found out I was amazed before I was halfway through. Just going halfway through it, like, oh, this is some good stuff here. This is where the juice is at. I was so scared to make amends because I thought of scenarios that might not happen or might could happen. Like I thought a situation, an approach was going to go the way that I thought it would go. It never went the way that I ever thought it would go. It went even better the way that I didn't plan it out. Um, and it says, I was going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. That word know, it's an experiential. Uh, how I know Paige likes the bird watch. I've seen her do it. Yeah. Um, how I know Caleb and Mary and Ajane are from Atlanta, Georgia. Like I know that stuff. It's an experiential thing. It's something you can't really explain. You just have to experience it. I knew that freedom, I guess that new sense of freedom, and new means something I've never experienced before. I felt that when I made that random amends to that person who passed away at the funeral home. Uh, I guess the new happiness was something where I can't just generate self-manufacture. I can't self-will into fruition. It just was. It is what it was. I have no idea if that made sense. Uh, yeah, it was bizarre. I was just happy, like as a state of being. Um, we will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. I found out through amends that talking about Um, times where I was being a knucklehead and uncomfortable, embarrassing situations that I created, helped other people, which was kind of weird. It's like, what's going on here? Like, um, I've had people refer me uh, to help family members. And if you really think about it, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. I mean, and this what happened to me was I had a family member who I made amends to someone, and they had a family member who was suffering from alcoholism. And I made an approach to that individual. And I don't think that other families or other people in the world suffer from what we do, especially families. But there's always one person in a family that knows someone of a family member that's hurting and suffering. Um, and your past is you're going to be your greatest asset when you start talking about it with these people because they notice, they see you. All right, this cat's like got his head up, like he was looking down before, but now he's like looking me in the eye. You know, he's confident, his chest is out, he's happy. His eyes aren't red. He doesn't look like Uncle Fester. He has blue under his eyes. Like there's something up with this dude, you know, like something's changed. And he was crazy. Like he was nuts. He like actually paid me back money that I forgot about, you know, like and he's still sober and as more time goes by, it's weird. It's like I just you kind of be like that go-to person for other families. It's kind of weird. Oh, I know someone who needs help with, you know, drug addiction, and you know, you're the first person that came to mind. That's happened to me a bunch of times. So, and I don't regret my past because it's I never know who it could actually help someone. I remember I was sitting at it was funny. I was sitting at a 7 days sober. I went to this place called Bear Mountain, New York, with this AA kind of get together party. I was sitting across from this woman, and then I had 7 days. You know, I was edgy, yeah. And I told her I had I was talking about open heart surgery, and she's like, "Can I see your scar?" And I was like, "Yeah." I showed her the scar, and she's like, "You're gonna help a lot of people with that scar." And I don't know why that just came into my mind, but it was it's been my experience where it's more towards cocaine anonymous, narcotics anonymous, where I meet people who have heart attacks because of cocaine and drug addiction, whereas in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I'm talking to many people who have heart issues and contact me just because um, they've been through the same ringer that I have, and how did I get out of it? Um, you know, I don't regret that experience I had having open heart surgery. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It made me aware that I couldn't stay stopped on my own power. You know, it was just one little thing that chipped away at my ego and brought me to you guys. So I will comprehend the word serenity, and I will know. There's that word "know" again. I will know peace. So I think another experiential thing with God. These we could do a whole fucking hour on this. Okay. I'll start. I'm sorry. I'll speed it up. Um, It's just funny because I have all these old emotions and old feelings coming back from making amends and experience I've had. It's funny, I've talked about this before, where like this book is like as an evolution to this book in terms of having experience with it. It's like a book of codes. And in order to release these codes, you plug in your experience. And I've had an evolution of experiences currently or a few years ago, just kind of changed and adapted and grown. What happened with to know peace is, I guess, the first time I knew peace was during COVID, because I made an aggressive attempt to make amends because my ass was on the line, and I knew I was going to get high or drink again if I didn't. And I started to notice during these approaches um, that something happened to me that I stopped thinking about it, but then it really put to the test when COVID hit. Lockdown, 2 weeks, no one to talk, no meetings, none of that. And no matter what the storm that I was going through, I had calmness and peace. and serenity during horrible things that were happening. Um, that's happened to me many times. I mean, yet again, I could probably go talk about that for another 30 minutes on my experience with that, but that was the first time that I noticed that I experienced peace, where the world was literally on fire up here and I was fine, more than fine, you know? No matter how far on the scale I've gone, I will see how my experience can benefit others. Kind of talked about that a little bit. Um, I've had experiences making amends where people have realizations about themselves. It's kind of weird. They're like, oh man, like I've done that. Like I'm so self. They start talking about themselves, and I'm just like, shut up, because I was taught to shut the f up. You know, I think that's the biggest thing during amends is to be a good listener. I think that's probably the key thing to bring to an amends is be a listener. You know, and not talk about their faults or their problems or their condition or their defects of character, whatever it is. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Scott Lee does a great job. I stole this from him. He said, if, you know, why are those two in the same sentence? Well, if I'm being useful, I'm not in self-pity. All right. And if I'm being useful, I'm not in fear. If I'm being useful, I'm not being selfish. If I'm being useful, I'm not angry. If I'm being useful, and so on and so forth. The whole book, all what's happening right now is generating us to be useful, to be helpful. You know, I believe it mentions useful, helpfulness, 120 plus times before we even get to chapter seven, working with others, right? So when I'm useful, I'm no longer thinking about me. And what happens is I'm no longer being driven by 100 forms of self and all that stuff. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. That was a cool experience. Yet again, all right, let me move forward. Self-seeking will slip away, like what I want when I want it, just kind of fell for me. Uh, Manipulating, bullying, withdrawing. Like I was no longer apart from life. I was a part of life. So all this things that I wanted just kind of fell from me, you know? My whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Like I was looking at life through a different pair of glasses. You know, I was awake, I was aware, I was living in the moment. You know, these are all descriptions of what it looks like to live in the world of the spirit. All descriptions of what it looks like to live in the fourth dimension, right here, right now, right? Fear of, I like that word, fear of. That means it's self-manufactured. God didn't give me the spirit of fear. So I created it by myself. So this fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. So I've had experiences where I made amends and I see someone I really don't want to see at a grocery store. You know what I'm doing. You guys know what I'm talking about. I remember I made amends to my mother-in-law, and afterwards I went to the grocery store with Phoenix, and there was someone from high school, and I haven't seen her in maybe 15 years or something like that plus. And usually my first inclination is dart the other way or look down and pretend not to see them, but you know you see them and to make sure they don't look up and see you and then damn it, I gotta make eye contact. None of that shit happens. I was just like confident. I was like, oh man, you know, I was it was like I want to be around people. It was weird. It was no longer fearful of anyone. It was just I was awake and aware because I was making approaches and repairing the damage I was done with the world and its people. Economic insecurity, yeah, I've made amends. And here's the cool thing: you'll be broke as a joke, but you'll no longer be fearful. Being broke is a thing, which is an odd paradox. I can't really explain that. It's more of an experiential kind of thing. Um, where I started to notice that I could care less about how much money was in my bank account, even though I was paying X amount of money per month, or to this person, or to the bank, or to my credit cards, or to the New York. Or, I mean, I could go on. I mean, all these situations where I made financial amends, I started to notice that I could care less about money. It was no longer driving my life. Where was it? We will intuitively know, there's that word know again, how to handle situations we choose to baffle us. Because now I started to create this God consciousness within me. I started to become aware of it, and I'm starting to listen to it. It's always been there. I'm just aware of it now. We practice more of that with 10, which we kind of did last week. Oh yeah, by the way, Paige, we jumped to 10 and to talk about helping with making with your amends, So we went back and forth. Thank God you're back. I was tired of talking. I like yeah, let me breeze by these. We will suddenly is a time frame. That means now. Suddenly, suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. So remember Jim's story, right? Jim's story said suddenly it's a time frame that is now. The thought crossed my mind that an ounce of whiskey wouldn't hurt me on a full stomach. So the insane idea of getting drunk or getting high is in the now, but who else is chilling in the now? God. So if I build a relationship with it now, or your higher power, or whatever you want to call it, the great pumpkin, it will separate you from taking action or making a decision to take action. And that's been my experience. I've been living in the moment, more in the moment. I guess the more sobriety time I'm going through, the more I drive to live in the now because it's awesome. For some odd reason, it's like, I don't know. I love being there. And I think when I get there all the time, it's when I'm being inspired by being useful to you or hanging out with you or being laughing with you or, I mean, talking about X, Y, and Z with you, you know. And I could have never been around you unless I made amends. All right, time is up. My baby's, hold on. I'll be right back.
Absolutely, no worries. So yeah, I'll just pick up where Terry left off in the reading and then kind of go back. So it says, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. There is an intuition. Now, I'll tell you what that looks like for me in a very literal, practical sense. You know, when you're running a little bit late, and then you text the person, I just want to give you the heads up. I'm running a little bit late. I don't know about you, but I needed the spirit of the universe because I would just sit and be anxious and worried about it. Or like I would double book myself and just want to vomit with no answer, no solution. And like oftentimes communication and that ability to show up to relationships in a radically new way. Like, I don't know about you, but life, existence was something that was utterly baffling to who I am. And when I'm doing this thing, this way of life, I'm able to show up in a way that I never thought possible. And it says, we will suddenly. And I want to emphasize suddenly, because just as Terry is talking about the now, suddenly means it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to recover. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening. Did you want me to pass it back so you can wrap up this paragraph and then I go back and add?
No, no, you're on fire. Go.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
And so suddenly does not take long to get well, does not take long to recover. And just so you know, when Terry was like, "Oh, I should get quiet," I'm like, "Go, go, keep going. I'm here for it." It was awesome. So we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could never do for ourselves. And what does that look like? What could I never do by myself? Well, I'll tell you, permanent, contented sobriety. At base minimum, I could not do that. It was impossible. It was inconceivable for somebody like me. I could white knuckle, just not drinking and using for a while. But the whole time in the back of my head was the little voice that told me I needed to kill myself. That feeling that I didn't fit and I didn't belong and that I wasn't like you and what's the point and I suck and I'm a loser and I'm the worst and I should just kill myself. I mean, that's my default setting and I will relapse. And I'll tell you, coming back after I burn it to the ground again, I'm not feeling little miss, congeniality. I'm not feeling freedom. I'm that voice inside of myself, the screaming is getting louder and louder, and I'm not okay. So what is God doing for me that I could not do for myself? Permanent, contented sobriety. That's what's on offer. Not just don't drink, not don't pick up, don't gamble or compulsively do whatever, but freedom, real freedom. But also, I'm talking bare minimum, bare bones, what permanent contented sobriety. There is so much more, so much more. When I look at things that were absolutely impossible in my life, this power has taken me to be able to show up to life in a way that I did not think possible. When I first came into the rooms at 12 step, this might be shocking for some of y'all. I didn't talk for now it's a hard time trying to get me to shut up. I need to join a fellowship on and on and on anonymous, one of those. But that's God is doing for me that which I could not do for myself. And here's the thing. I'm taking a course of action that, let's be real, I don't want to do. I don't want to do. At any point before I make an amends, even today, if I know I owe an amends, like I know me well enough to know I'm going to rip off the Band-Aid, I'm going to dive in, I'm going to do it. But I'm going to have my pre-amends digestive issues, I'm going to have my tummy troubles and my got to sit close to the toilet sort of sitch pre-amends. Like, this is a course of action that I don't want to take, but I want to be very clear. I'm taking action. We're into action. This thing is about growth, about seeking, about action, about consistency. But I'm not doing the heavy lifting. God is doing the heavy lifting. I know that to be true because things that I thought were critical to who I was as a human being have changed. And I don't mean the things that I liked. I mean, like, literally, I was like Eeyore. Oh no, I've lost my tail. Oh no, I've done all my dope. Like I was miserable. I would suck the energy out of the room. Like I was difficult to be around. And that's might be difficult to be around for other reasons today. But that's not who I am today. There has been a change, a profound change in who I am, a profound change in how I show up. And all I did was write some inventory I didn't write, share it with somebody, even though I didn't think that would help. Spend an hour in quiet, become willing to allow what I see to be taken from me. Ask for it to be removed. Set my wrongs to the best of my ability and continue that practice and help others. That's it. And as a result, who I am is a completely different human being. God does the heavy lifting. Now, what I'll do is I'll just take this next paragraph and then I'll go back and kind of add some things that I wanted to share about and really tie into what Terry was talking about. And it says, are these extravagant promises? And if I am at an in-person meeting and I am sitting next to a friend, this is not good meeting etiquette, but I'll be honest with you. If I am at an in-person meeting and I'm sitting next to a friend, I'm like, yeah, they could be. They seem pretty extravagant. Like, I'll just lean over and be like, yes, they're very extravagant. Yes. You're telling me this fall down, pissing my pants behind a dumpster, smoking crack, hopeless human being, free? Free from the bondage of self-pity, uselessness, disappearing? Yeah, that's pretty extravagant. And it says, we think not. And at the meetings, we often chat, we think, absolutely, I will look up that, but I'll have to do that when I toss it over to you because I'm pretty good at multitasking. I found the name of the documentary already, but I'm not that good. So we think not, and we chant that. And the reason, and we emphasize that, is not because this is our opinion, it is our lived experience. And it is the lived experience of the first 180 members. And all of us who have taken this course of action, that is our lived experience. And it says they're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But again, I need to get through these amends quickly. I need to do it thoroughly. And of course, I want to have my heart in the right place, but I don't want to wait. And sometimes when we talk about sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, people will be like, I'm a sometimes slowly sort of person. And it's like, hey, have you made your amends? Yep, I'm averaging about like one amend a year. Like if I'm doing it slowly, I'm not going to get the results. I got to go after this thing. And like Terry was talking, I want to have an intention. I want to have that posture of my heart. I don't want it just to be a checklist, but action builds momentum. And that momentum, at least for me, is where that grace often resides. And this is again a promise. They will always materialize. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter your andas and your yabbats. It will always materialize. Now, this is something I sometimes chant in meetings, which is a lot easier to do when I'm out of town. And then act as if that, oh, they just do that where I'm from. No, they don't. But I'll chant this is if we work for them. That is the caveat. That is the condition. That is the fine print that all of these promises have. The fifth step, or that I'm sharing everything in my fifth step. Those promises. The ninth step promises are that I'm at 9, actively making amends. I have made at least half of my amends and I'm continuing. I've got to work for them. But if I do, it will happen. So first and foremost, I really want, so going back to sort of add to what Terry was already talking about, although that's hard to because he was just crushing it. And oh goodness, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Would love you. So when we talk about the ninth step promises, Terry was talking about how these things are experiential. And man, if you're not sure, here's how we know that this is experiential. What I mean by that, what Terry means by that, it's not based on an opinion. It's not based on what we think. It is based on our lived experience. And this is how we know it's experiential. We will be amazed before we are halfway through. Now, anyone here who has not made an amends made amends, if your sponsor or like me, this silly little drunken crackhead, shows up and says, all right, if you power through these amends, if we go after this thing, what will happen is you will be amazed. What you will likely do is say, okay, yeah, like, because you're going to be polite to me, typically. But in your head, what you're going to be thinking is like, absolutely not. You're out of your effing mind. She's, no, amazed. But that is our experience, amazed. This is experiential. And when we talk about knowing freedom, knowing happiness, not regretting the past, these are not ideas, they are experiences. When I can tell you that I'm free, that I can tell you I can sit and be my own skin, when I can share with you freely the worst things that I've ever done, man, that's experiential. That fear of financial insecurity, which is a little rude because it doesn't say financial insecurity will leave us. Now, some of you that are social introverts were hoping because it says fear of people and of social insecurity. It's like, it's really hoping we're not going to have like, oh, people are going to leave and financial problems. Delightful. No, but it is the fear of them. Like that. When that happens, and you have that sense of calm in your heart and in your soul, it's like that's experiential. Now, I talk about the experiential nature of the 12 steps. So for those of you who are alcoholics and drug addicts, you know what it's like when you take that first drink, or take that first hoot, or do that first line, or pop that pill, or whatever brings you to the study. When you text the ex, or meet up with that person, or whatever it is, and you get that flush of that is an experience. And if I were to just tell you about that experience, you're not getting that experience. I need that experience. And it's just like that here. I need an experience. I can't stay well on the idea of relief. I need relief. Now, as Terry was talking about how we don't need to shut the door on our past. and how incredible. And this is how we know we are being of use to others. And like that, I'm not in charge because I think I know how amends will go and how often a 9th-step amend will turn into a 12-step call. Setting right my wrongs is an opportunity to be of further use, to help others, to be of service to God and those about me. God, higher power, creator, the spirit of the universe. And it's a tie into the 3rd-step decision that we made. And also, and like, see, that's the thing. I'm like, take your time. I know I'm going to natter on, Terry. And in fact, I'm going to bounce us. Is it cool? We're going to bounce a little. So Terry was talking about that transformational process, and I like to talk about that spiritual alchemy, not regretting the past nor wishing to shut the door on it, seeing how my experience can benefit others. How does that happen? Well, some powerful promises we'll find on page 124. So if you want to bounce with me, and if you don't, that's okay. Everything that I'm showing up with is consensual. You don't have to. I won't even say it's what all the cool kids do. But let's pop over to page, yeah, let's bounce. Page 124. This is that spiritual alchemy. It says, Henry Ford, doesn't matter who said it, once made a wise remark to the effect that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. My experience is what is valuable. My experience is what carries weight. My experience is what is vitally important. But it goes on to say this is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. So the spiritual alchemy is I show up to the rooms at 12-step with this guilt and the shame and those secrets and wanting to like ignore people in the aisles of the grocery store. I always talk about like I can't be an agent for God if I'm hiding behind mailboxes, even though I don't think we have many of those anymore. And I think Canada Post is on strike again, so I don't know how that's going. But like I can't be that agent for God if I'm hiding. So I've got to turn the past to good account. So how do I do that? How does the spiritual alchemy happen? It says we grow, because growth is the name of the game, by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. I face my errors in step 4. I face my errors in step 5. I face them in step 6. And I begin to rectify them in step 7, in step 8, and then step 9. And in so doing, that converts them into assets. It says the alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset, the main asset of the family. And frequently, it's almost the only one. And it goes on to, and I won't continue on, but man, it's powerful. That idea that showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile now. Showing others how I have recovered. And I'm not just talking about the obsession of the mind. I'm talking about when life hits, and life will hit. I'm not exempt from pain and suffering. I'm a human being, and it's kind of rude that I am not elevated above this human experience, as I feel like listen, I wrote some inventory. It behooves me. I'm wearing that hoodie today. But I feel like I wrote some inventory and I should be elevated above the human experience. But that's not the case. And the most painful things that have happened to me are now the most useful things that I have, because I can sit down with another human being and say, yes, me too. And this is how I got freedom from it. And that is powerful. Now, I'm going to do one more thing and then toss it over to Terry. One more thing. And what I want to do is there's this tie-in between the bedevilments on page 52 and the 9th-step promises. Now, the bedevilments on page 52, they are a beautiful description of what it is like to live in the spiritual malady. The spiritual malady, not limited to alcoholics, drug addicts, compulsive gamblers, compulsive whatever brings you to this study. There are spiritually sick people. You'll find them in Atlanta traffic. I'm sure. You will find those spiritually sick people. But if we relate to those bedevilments, if I relate to that desperate need for emotional sobriety, what I want you to know is that is the purpose of these 12 steps. And let me show you. So I'm going to do boop and then boop. I got to make sound effects when I do things because that's how my brain works. So in the 9th step promises, It talks about, and I'll zoom in so it's a little easier for people to see. In the ninth step promises, it talks about we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Well, in the bedevilments, it spoke about we were unhappy. And if I'm here today and I am unhappy and I'm wanting or hoping or just maybe there could be a new freedom and a new happiness, what do I have to do? 4 through 9. And then obviously continue that in 10, 11, and 12. And on the ninth step promises, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whereas in the bedevilments, I couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. And as Terry was talking about, if I can't be useful, I'm wrapped up in self and self-pity, and it's painful. And it says, we will comprehend the word serenity. That's not rattling off definitions from my 1936 dictionary. That's living in our heart the word serenity and knowing in my heart peace. Well, in the bedevilments, I couldn't control my emotional natures. In the bedevilments, when my illness was untreated, my feelings and emotions were all over the place. I was guided by pain and misery and anxiety and these mood swings, and I was not okay. And in the ninth step promises, no matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. And again, that idea that in the bedevilments, I could not be of real help to other people. And the ninth step promises that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. And it goes on to say, we had a feeling of uselessness in the bedevilments. I was driven by uselessness and it's gone. Here in the ninth step promises. It says we will lose, in ninth step promises, we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. And in the bedevilments, I'm having trouble with personal relationships. I can't see that the reason is because I'm wrapped up in self and I can't see beyond me. It's me on me, like bone on bone, and it is painful, and I'm not able to show up to you. In the ninth step promise, our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. And in the bedevilments, on my own, untreated, I am a prey to misery and depression. That misery and depression is on me. We speak about that fear of people and if economic insecurity will leave us. The ninth step promises, well, in the bedevilments, I couldn't make a living. And that doesn't mean I can't hold down a job. Maybe I'm underemployed. Maybe I'm spending it faster than I can get it. Maybe I'm in debt. Maybe I show up to work, but I want to kill myself every day. Could not make a living. Ninth step promise, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Well, in the bedevilments, I'm fully baffled because I am full of fear. I don't know how to get free of it. And so if I am here today and I'm looking for some emotional sobriety, this is how we get it. It's not like an extra course, like a little add-on, like for $5.99, you can get your emotional sobriety. Absolutely. I'll make sure I put them in the chat. I'll also put them in the WhatsApp chats. And if you don't get them at that point, bug me. I'll send them to you. I'll make sure y'all get them one way or another. But emotional sobriety is the point. It is the point. Alrighty. And then I think that would be me tossing it back over to you. Pew pew. Over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Paige. Yeah, it's good to have you back. Doesn't sound like our life is unmanageable anymore. Sounds like it's not just manageable, but it's extraordinary, I guess, and extravagant. If you could get me that definition, that'd be great. Um, yeah, yeah, let's go to the next paragraph. Let's go. This thought brings us to step 10. What thought? Making our amends, right? Which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new, keyword is new, mistakes as we go along. We're going to make mistakes. I have a friend in Boston. She says the average individual or human being makes 400 to 600 mistakes a day without even knowing it. All right. The whole point is not to look at these mistakes with guilt, shame, and remorse. It is an opportunity to learn from. Why? Because you're in unionship with God now. Your life is not just manageable, it's extraordinary. And now you get to view and be aware of these mistakes because you get to clean it up in the moment. Step 10 is a moment step, it's a now step. I spent a lot of time last week talking about this, so I'll kind of breeze by it. And then Paige could dissect the shit out of it. All right. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So I start 10 and 11 right now while I'm making my meds. So I'm going to give you guys, I don't think I spoke about this last week, but I need help with step 10 and 11 to make every single one of my amends. Let's say you have fear of making amends, financial amends, right? Let's say I have a fear of making it. I'm like, hey, Paige, um, first thing to do is we ask God to remove it. Hey, God, can you please remove this fear? And okay. And then I don't hear anything, but then I go talk to Paige about it. Paige gives me her experience on it. Then I feel confident. I'm energized because spoke through her to talk to me, and I go make that amend. Here is the deal when I don't do this. What happens if I'm not watching? The next it says we enter the world of the spirit. I'll just read the paragraph and go backwards. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. Uh, it should continue for our lifetime. So continue to watch for selfish, dishonest, resentment, and fear. Step four, when your self-examination becomes self-awareness in the moment. When these things crop up, not if they do, but they do all the time, what do? We ask God to remove them at once or remove them at once to remove them. Now, at once means now. We discuss them with someone next day. Nah, I threw that in there. No, now, immediately means now. And make amends quickly, which also means now if we've harmed anyone. And then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we could help, right? Love and tolerance of others is our code. This is what happens. See, it doesn't say we continue to listen. It says we continue to watch. I like to listen to my fears. Anyone listen to their fears and their worries or their self-pity or their anxiety? Yeah, I love listening to that story. What will happen if I'm continue to listening to my fears? There's a snowball effect that will happen. And it's like taking a snowball, put it down a mountain, and the snowball becomes bigger, bigger, bigger. I'm no longer watching for these things coming up. I'm just being dominated by them. I'm being tortured by them. And then all of a sudden, you'll start to see page 52 come into fruition, and I'm being tormented by all the bedevilments that page is talking about because I'm no longer in unionship with power. Then what's going to happen? What happens if I don't ask God to remove it at once? I'm no longer talking to God. The snowball becomes bigger. What happens if I don't discuss them with Paige immediately? Snowball becomes bigger. What happens if I don't make amends in that moment? Snowball becomes bigger. And then the story becomes louder in my head. What happens if I'm unable to turn my thoughts to someone I can help? Snowball becomes bigger. And all of a sudden, this snowball will be so large that there'll be such a large separation between me and you and me and God. And I'm going to take a drink in order to quiet that talker that's in my head or that fear. Or I'll balk on my amends because I'll rationalize and justify my fear not to make the amends. This is where a lot of people fall off because they go make amends without parental supervision being one of them, but without help with 10 and 11 and bringing it into prayer and meditation. God, how should I approach this? God, what should I do with this? Give me an intuitive thought. Relax. Take it easy. Listen, listen, listen. Pause. Watch. Ask. Discuss. Turn, turn, turn. Love and tolerance is no longer my freaking code. I'm talking shit about everybody, and I'm completely separated. And all of a sudden, that day will happen where my step one comes into fruition, where it says, "I will drink again," and I won't even think about it. I'll just be like, how did I end up here? How did I end up at the bar again?" And I mean, there's a friend of mine. His name's Kurt Z. He's awesome. Go on YouTube, listen to Kurt. He had 19 years of sobriety, and he was a big book guy, mentored by what's his name? Oh my God, who's Mark Houston's sponsor? I forgot. Don Pritz, Don Pritz, Joe Hawk. Those were the boys. They're all together. Knew the big book in and out, helping people nonstop. and he drank after 19 years. And he is one of the best at breaking down this page, one of the best. And he'll say it over and over again. I stop practicing step 10. I stop practicing step 11. You know? So, yep, back to you, Paige. Wrap us up.
Absolutely. So I found extravagant. And extravagant is an adjective. You didn't need to know that, but that's just how my brain's working. I'm reading the stuff I don't need to read. Is exceeding exceeding reasonable limits, wasteful, prodigal, like the metaphor of the prodigal son, like that wasteful, like that one, wasteful. I also looked up prodigal. That's why I know. Uh, irregular, needlessly lavish and expenditure, visionary. Also, the definition of extravagance, excess in anything, especially in expenditure, like expenses, uh, and profusion. I didn't have time to look up profusion, but somebody will tell me. And so, what we're talking about there is the idea that are these promises so outlandish, so lavish. Like imagine you're getting new curtains, and instead of just getting some IKEA blinds, you're getting some like 17th century gold gilded tassel sort of curtains. You know what I mean? Like, girl, that's a little extravagant, right? And it's saying, are these promises extravagant? Now, here's what I know to be true. On my own power, they are beyond extravagant. They are impossible. I can tell you, there was a time in my life, and I was sober, but not really doing this. Like doing some of it, I'd done like a fifth step, and I'd like sort of done like an amends, or that thing where we done a little bit, and we're skating off old stuff. We're out living in 10, 11, 12, but I'm making some beatings. I was there. And I had not experienced that awakening of the spirit. And I can tell you, at that time in my life, I wanted to be happy. And that was the best that I could do. I couldn't even want to be happy. I couldn't even approach happiness. I was several steps away from happiness. So not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. Comprehend serenity, no peace. You better believe that that is extravagant for somebody like me. It's impossible for somebody like me. But what happens is I take a course of action I don't believe in and I do not think will help. And God does the heavy lifting. God changes me and brings me into this fourth dimension of existence, this awakened spirit. And that's what we're continuing to grow in step 10. And so, yeah, what I'll do, we're at the hour, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of the natural kind of like leaving it there place. So what we'll do is next week we'll continue pick up in step 10 and dive in some more. Thank you guys for coming. I missed you. I really did. It's so nice to be with you. And I'll stop the recording and we can wrap it up with a